future trends, deep insights, industry leaders. This is the iGaming Next podcast with your host, Pierre Lindh.
I couldn't hold it, Nico. We had to start it like that today again. I'm sorry.
All good. I'm fine.
Very good. We are back for rapid fire news, Nico, in this dynamic, funny industry, and it's definitely been a week that has had a lot of interesting controversy, quarterly reports coming out, a lot of interesting movements in the industry from both American level, from European level. And we've been all over the place. I mean, very interesting. I'm very happy to be in this industry, and I'm really happy to share this little hour with you here, Nico, that we have ahead. But to start off with, how is everything in Germany?
Germany's still good. Winter is just around the corner. We're happily looking forward to a Halloween weekend. So lots of dressed up people will be running around. And I'm just thrilled to see some happy faces, some happy children handing out some sweets. So that's what I'm pretty much looking forward to as well. Besides doing these rapid fire news with you as well, as our industry is just thrilling each and every week. So we are pretty much lucky being within the industry and having the chance to actually walk our audience through what has happened within the last week.
Absolutely, Nico. And as you can see, my poncho has come out today, of all things. I'm trying to set a new trend here. That's how it is. But to the detriment of my girlfriend, who is not so happy about that. But anyway, also, I wanted to mention, we organized the iGaming Next conference here last week as well, and kind of gathered the industry around 2 days of really good thought leadership. And I was thinking, it was so cool to see how motivated the industry is to move forward into the future now. There's so many interesting projects and changing dynamics and so on that we will see now in the iGaming industry. And just one of these trends that is solidifying at the moment is the move into social casino. And our good friend Carolina Pelk is at the forefront of this movement, of course, with her Beyond Play. But so is another good friend of ours, our very own shareholder to iGaming Next, Robin Eric Reed, who is now launching Happy Hour, and he has a new company called Live Spins, which essentially is all about the social casino. And Robin hosted a keynote here during iGaming Next, where he basically laid out his proposal, let's say his white paper, if you will, for how this industry will be completely disrupted now as he launches himself into the social casino aspect. And he's making it very clear, it's not about attracting the current demographic of casino players, because not all of the current casino player segment is necessarily that excited to play in social casinos. But he's talking a lot about how this will attract a new type of player into our world, using the social aspect basically. And as we see now with obviously Facebook rebranding to Meta and moving into a push towards the metaverse, the social aspect of anything is absolutely the future. Creating a community is the future for any organization, more or less, I would say.
Yeah, we see this kind of movement in the sports betting industry as well. If you just think about 76, which is a private equity company or funding company investing into Lucra Sports. So Lucra Sports is considered as one of the social first platforms for the sports betting industry as well. So not just besides social casino, we also see this kind of movement within the sports betting industry as well. So it will be thrilling to see where our ship of the overall industry is actually steering towards. If this will just be one of the side markets, or considered as being the next big thing. So we've seen a lot of the next big things within our industry.
Absolutely, yeah.
So that's just great.
Yeah, and it ties into a larger trend, in a larger global trend. I think what we're seeing right now, which is I don't know if you've heard of Web3, but essentially, if you look at the internet from the birth of the internet in the early 90s, Web1 was very much you saw like publications entering the internet where you can go to a news site and you can read. That's like kind of like Web1, very much a one-way communication, let's say. And then Web 2 happened somewhere around 2004, 2005, where these social media giants became apparent, and the internet went from being a directory into more a social sphere, but very much controlled by these 5 or so big companies, the Facebooks of this world, the Googles, and so on. And now Web 3, what is happening is now leveraging blockchain technology in order to become truly independent from these major organizations. So for example, and this is where we're seeing like the rise of NFTs and the rise of blockchain tech, Ethereum, and so on, where, for example, in the future, creative people, they don't need these third parties like the Spotifys of this world. If you're a singer songwriter on Spotify, you get paid peanuts, right? For every dollar Spotify makes. I can't remember what it is. It's like 1 cent or something like that. 2 cents goes to the actual artist. I mean, we are talking about 98% or so of the revenue generated does not go to the actual content providers of the platform. That is insane, But that's the logic of that model, and Spotify is doing the best that they can with that model. But in the future, with Web3, we will have decentralized platforms which doesn't have an owner, where the artists themselves are the owners of the platform, let's say, and they will be able to generate, rather than generating 2% of the royalties, they generate 98% of the royalties instead. And so we'll see this across the board in general, and this is why this is part of Facebook push into the metaverse. I think what Facebook is missing here is the fact that the Web3 will, the very definition of moving into this decentralized Web3 is that the giants like Facebook will be made redundant, and it's going to happen very quick as well. And it ties into gambling as well, because again, looking at, for example, sports betting exchanges, like the Betfairs, for example, in a very short period of time, we'll see decentralized sports betting exchanges where you don't need a Betfair in the middle. You have decentralized platforms, which is all done by smart contracts. So you don't really need someone who is like overseeing this platform. And there is a startup in the gambling space already. I can't remember the name of it. I have to look it up later. But there is already decentralized platforms coming here. So even the gambling space will be disrupted. And like I said, it goes into this larger trend of decentralization, Web3, that is going to change the iGaming industry, but it's also going to change other digital industries as well. That is an absolute rabbit hole of its own, but really pay attention to what Facebook is doing now, rebranding from Facebook to Meta and going all in on the metaverse. And they have already communicated that they will leverage blockchain and crypto and NFT technology in their version of the metaverse. But I would be very surprised actually if they succeed, because they will have this massive decentralized consortium of developers who will be developing products that doesn't have owners. Essentially, it's an absolute rabbit hole, but it's the future, and you should definitely pay attention to it.
Thing is, so with a decentralized way of operating and running a business, sounds good, but as soon as regulation kicks in, right, you need to have someone overlooking and making sure that all the regulatory aspects are taken into account as well. Running the KYC, running the AML in a proper way, protecting or reducing gambling addiction like Kindred actually does. Just think about a decentralized way. No one actually overlooking the overall movements in one specific market. Where would this market pretty much evolve into? So even within the sports betting industry, where we actually see a shift back in the days, 20, 25 years ago, we all know what actually happened within the casino resorts in Nevada, Las Vegas, etc. Right? And when we still had this kind of gold digging mentality also within the online sports betting world, and this literally changed, first of all, with regulators coming into place, actually fining companies if they are not protecting the players, not taking AML that serious. And now we also see sports betting companies like Kindred, paving the way and leading the way with saying, okay, by 2023, we will reduce harmful gaming within our revenue scheme to 0%. Or also take into account the ballot in California, where these 7 big operators, the DraftKings, the FanDuels, etc., the WinBets, where they actually filed a ballot to state, okay, if the regulator does not step up, we will just come up with a plan to actually open up the market, and 10% of our revenue will be given on a free to choose basis to homeless and sick people. Right, so that's also a great thing. How you actually see our industry moving and leading the pack instead of just waiting for a regulator to actually become active in a specific market. Right, and this is also a movement we see within our industry as well. But it will be thrilling to actually, see the impact of a Web3 within an overall industry as well. And getting back to the Facebook, we all know where this actually comes from. There are rumors spreading around that this is more a big fight between Apple and Facebook. But in the end, customers still need a device to log in either to Facebook or Spotify or whatever. And the market share which all the Apple devices still have is insane. And getting back to the Spotify revenue scheme, and this is also taking to court, which has not yet been decided, because Apple actually takes 25 or 30% of the overall revenue from Spotify away. So in the end, if you just consider the overall balance sheets, 100% revenue, 30% is already giving to the marketplace, which Apple obviously is. And then within these 70%, which Spotify is just being able to deal with. So for sure, we will still see movements. But this is how the overall ecosystem just kicks in. It's not an easy solution. You always have to take a look at the overall ecosystem.
Yeah, exactly. It's we are standing in front of an absolute revolution here, where again, previously the internet has been controlled by these 5 or so, ginormous corporations who is controlling the way we interact with each other. But very rapidly, this will change now into a more decentralized system with the more mainstream use of blockchain technology and now the adoption of NFTs, where we can finally create scarcity in a digital environment. But I think that's an absolute interesting discussion on its own right, and I think we are the iGaming Next podcast at the end of the day, and I think the viewers and the listeners should absolutely look into this space in general, because it's going to change all industries, all digital industries in general, and iGaming being one of them, of course. And we are looking very closely into how this. What potential threats and opportunities will come out of this. But again, to go full circle here, I think Robin's presentation here on live spins and his vision of how to bring kind of the social aspect into live casino. Online casino will be another one of these paradigm shifts in the iGaming industry. That's how Robin sees it, and I would keep a very close eye on this project now as well as we move forward. And also interesting to see what the likes of Evolution will do in response to this social push, because they have the infrastructure and technology to truly take the social aspects of live casino to the next level. And now talking about the metaverses and so on, perhaps that is something that Todd and his crew are keeping a very close eye on, I would imagine. So asking themselves, how can they leverage this next paradigm shifts of the digital world?
Yeah. For sure, a conversation, we could continue and keep up for hours and hours and hours. Hopefully not ending in a philosophical way as well. But this just shows how dynamic our industry actually is, and how we actually, kind of act and react. Usually, as soon as a mobile device came out, the overall shift from desktop placing a bet to mobile placing a bet, etc. We saw a paradigm shift as well, and now it's just the next thing.
Absolutely,
and it's just thrilling to see.
Absolutely. So what do you say, Nico? Shall we jump into the actual news stories of today?
Yes.
What do we have on the agenda?
All good. First of all, there had been a topic which you actually jumped in as well. Maybe you all also forced it in a specific way. We've seen the return of the king of Betsson, with Pontus Lindwall being back on the CEO seat. So this is quite an interesting movement, as last week or the week before last week, we've seen one of the members being resigned from the board of directors, and now Pontus is back. And I'm pretty sure, not just because you actually had a podcast with Pontus as well. So there's no one else who could walk us through that return of the king topic better than you. So just give us some insights, Pierre, please.
I feel like I was watching the Lion King here was playing out, the movie Lion King. Only this time, Mufasa actually returned and did not die in that herd that the original movie had him falling down over, when Scar then obviously let him down to the cliffs and down to his demise. But this time, the king of online casino, Pontus Lindwall, returned to the throne where he definitely belongs, sitting on. And so, in short, what happened essentially is that, to give some context here as well, is Pontus Lindwall started as the CEO of Betsson in 1999. Right, this is the early days of online gambling, and he was there for a short period of time. But Pontus has always been involved in Betsson, and so has his family. His family is one of the largest shareholders in Betsson. And he was tasked in 2017 to turn the ship around. At that time, 2017, Betsson was not in a good place. There was an exodus by the employees leaving the company. It was known here in Malta that every Betssonite was leaving the company. It was really bad at one point. And so the previous CEO was ousted, and Pontus Lindwall was appointed the CEO of Betsson AB and tasked with this turnaround that Betsson has done incredibly well. Like, Betsson is now again known as the company that employees wants to work for, and they are again known for this organization that is treating their employees well, as they used to be in the early 2000s and 2010s. And so the board of directors, very surprisingly, decided a month ago to let Pontus Lindwall go in search for new leadership. They hinted that they needed new international leadership in order to expand their efforts more effectively. Now, this came at the back of a Q2 21 report where Betsson published all-time high results. And everything seemingly seemed that Betsson had the future ahead of them, and Pontus Lindvall obviously doing an incredible job into taking them to that place. Pontus was very, very surprised by this decision, did not know, was not involved in any discussions, and said so publicly. And as it turned out, the shareholders and the key stakeholders in Betsson were not informed either of this decision. It was a decision that the board took on its own. Now, remember what I said in the beginning. Pontus Lindvall has been intertwined with Betsson since 1999. And his family, again, one of the major shareholders, others in his circles, major shareholders. And what happened? Yeah, they revolted. The major shareholders came together, decided that this is not the action that they want to see as shareholders in Betsson. They want to retain Pontus Lindvall. So they forced Patrik Svensk, the chairman of the board, who had been the chairman of the board for like 15 years in Betsson, they forced him to resign. They called an extraordinary shareholder meeting, and they reinstated Pontus as the CEO of Betsson AB. And Pontus now sees this as kind of like the start of a new era. Pontus got overwhelming support from the industry to continue in his mission, both from internally, from Betssonites, from ex-Betssonites like myself, and also from competitors who wished him to continue in his position. And he got his will, like the hero that he is. When you count him out, then he comes back even stronger. So it was nice to see, and Pontus was very happy during the podcast that we have here a couple of days ago. But this obviously comes at the back of the decision of the KSA, the Netherlands regulator, to basically shut out Betsson and other operators from the market until they have a license. And so they are navigating very dangerous waters at the moment. Betsson, Leo Vegas, Kindred, and other operators, as the Netherlands is obviously a very important market for many of these operators. And we will see the effect now in Q4. And so a lot of these quarterly reports that came out is investors are not really looking at the Q3 numbers. They are mainly looking at what's going to happen in Q4. So the story is very much of what's going to happen next in these quarterly reports. But yeah, so to summarize things, Pontus obviously back in action. There was clearly a lot of animosity and chaos within the board, but they have now put this behind them. The shareholders have ousted a couple of the board members, included a couple of new ones, and they are now ready to begin this new era of Betsson. And I am definitely one of the supporters of that, I can say.
So good for you, good for Pontus, and first of all, good for the overall Betsson group. If the kind of statement like "the king returned" reminds me a little bit of the Lord of the Rings saga, right? In the end, it's not like people dying or a big fight. In the end, it seems like Pontus is a well-deserved leader who is able and capable to actually bring back a ship and make a former likable workplace again a likable workplace again. And that's why a lot of employees are pretty happy, and also the industry, to see him coming back, right? And this is what we can not just read between the lines. It's quite obvious, and that's a good thing.
Absolutely.
Continuing with the Q3 numbers, which are reported and released, and as you already touched on, we've seen Kindred and all the other Nordics reporting the Q3 numbers, and along the board, each and every one of them is reporting an increase in the Q3 numbers. and directly giving a warning for the Q4 numbers as well, which is not the usual way to do things, right? Usually like, okay, we're super happy. Q3 is great. We have an increase of 6% like for Kindred. But giving out a warning for the Q4 numbers is a measure you usually don't do. But to give the audience a little bit of an insight as well, which you perfectly just wrapped up 2 or 3 weeks ago already. Kindred, they pretty much rely on the Dutch market. So 30% of the EBITDA just comes from the Netherlands, from the Dutch market. So as soon as they need to duck out of the market, as they don't have a license yet, of course, this EBITDA is gone. And we don't know if this 30% of EBITDA will be back, because as of now, there are other operators working in the Dutch market. But this just gives us a little bit of an insight why they actually give out a press release. Okay, these are our Q3 numbers, but the Q4 numbers we're seeing or we're anticipating a loss. Not a loss within the revenue overall scheme. I'm pretty sure they will just come out good with a decent number. But if you just compare the Q3 numbers with the Q4 numbers, you will just see a big hit. So besides speaking about Kindred already, what are your insights on other Nordic companies as well, Pierre?
Yeah, so there was the big four in the gambling industry, the Scandinavian gambling industry, that released the quarterly reports this month, right? So there was Evolution, Kindred, Betsson, and Kambi. And over the last years, shareholders have been flocking to these four companies. And obviously, the iGaming industry has been doing very well during the COVID pandemic here, proving itself as not only a recession-proof industry, but also a pandemic-proof industry. And so shareholders obviously like the fact that the iGaming industry is both. Seemingly that hypergrowth have now stopped. We have kind of reached the height of this COVID premium, if you will. Now we will see the operators and suppliers obviously having to work a lot harder to keep that growth up. And I'd like to zoom in particularly on Kindred here, because Kindred is in a very peculiar spot at the moment, where looking at the quarterly report, of course, the Netherlands is a starting point here. The fact that they are losing overnight 30% of the EBITDA, 30% overnight, unexpectedly. And I think it's important to point out that while Kindred is going to return to the Netherlands, and the expectation is in Q2 of next year, the return to the Netherlands, that does not mean that the 30% EBITDA is going to come back overnight. No, that's not the case. Why? Because the regulator, the KSA, one of the restrictions that there are on the new applicants is that you are not allowed to use your database that you have built up over the last 20 years in Kindred's case. And so once Kindred go live in the Netherlands again, they have to start from zero, from scratch. They are not allowed to use the old database for any marketing related activity. And previous customers have to create a new account as well. So there's barriers that are up into launching into this new market. And it's not like the market is standing still at the moment. We have the Bet365, for example, is active in the Netherlands. And they have a 9 months head start to build a database of loyal customers who previously have had its home at Kindred, Betsson, and Leo Vegas and other operators. And so the question is, are those customers loyal enough to return to Kindred once they go live? And I think the answer to that is it's going to take a lot of investment. And so once Kindred go live again, it will take a lot of investment into that market before even reaching profitability. And they will be up against other operators who also will commit significant investments on a marketing level for the same purpose, to build up their databases again. And so we are seeing a long-term loss of EBITDA from that market, of course. And that is in connection to the fact that the American numbers were lackluster of Kindred. Right, Kindred is doing a big push into the American market. Their ambition is to reach high-digit market capitalization in that market, in the states where they are live. And disappointingly, I would imagine they decreased the revenue 15% quarter on quarter in the North American market. And this is after activating some of their NFL and NHL partnerships, which are live now. So I would just imagine that is not a very happy situation within Kindred at the moment, and taking into account the fact that is a market where they are not generating profit from yet. It's more marketing investment than there is revenue into the North American market for any operator. And so the question must be asked, what is Kindred's future in the North American market? Especially since they have now lost 30% of the EBITDA. Will they pull back and save that investment? Will they invest even stronger in order to diversify the revenue streams and decrease the potential risk of another Netherlands happening and taking away a large portion of their revenue? Or what will they do? It's a tricky situation they're in, and they're obviously deep into UK as well, which is another market that is hanging in the balance a bit. And so Kindred is seemingly in a tough spot at the moment. But at the same time, and Robin Eric Reed pointed this out yesterday, he said, if there's anyone who can turn this around, if there's anyone who can find a way out from this, it is Kindred. They have a very strong and competent leadership team, and they have turned things around many times in the past. And so obviously they are not sitting silent in their boardrooms at the moment. They are thinking about these questions very deeply, I would imagine. And again, the industry is resilient, the industry is strong, and the prospect for the industry long term is very good. So I would say that there's short-term challenges for Kindred, but I'm also very confident that Kindred will persevere in the long term. And I think as an investor, that's how we should see things at the end of the day.
So, one thing is for sure, regulation doesn't come out of nowhere, right? That the Dutch market will be regulated is not a thing. They started being regulated by the 1st of October, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So usually you could have applied for a license back in the days already, right? Just being or keeping up the dialogue with the regulator. So first of all, I wouldn't change shoes with the guy or the girl, recommending the Kindred group. You don't need to apply for a license in the Netherlands. It's no big deal. And then out of a sudden, and this is where the power of regulation actually kicks in. First of all, you're not able to use the database which you build up. Is probably one of the things which they didn't see coming. And another thing is they also attached one more string to the overall leaving the market as well from a regulator perspective by telling them, okay, if you continue to operate illegally in the Dutch market, until you have a license, your license will be put on hold for the same time span as you operated illegally in the Dutch market. So for sure, whoever recommended Kindred not going for the license.
Tough times.
Yeah, tough times. Or maybe that person's looking for another job as well as so many others as well. Whoever consulted the Leo Vegas, the Betsons, etc. And just keep in mind that Bet365 holding a license to operate in the Dutch market, and as you pointed out as well, they have deep pockets. So they will be, advertising all over the place, making sure that most of the customers being interested in, participating in gaming, sports betting, casino, slots, whatever is possible in the Dutch market, will find a new home in the Bet365, as the customers are not able to log into Betson, not able to log into Kindred, as well as they stepped out of the market. And this will be a challenge, because in the end, the gaming customers are quite loyal. So once you gain the customer, as long as your product seems to be quite competitive, the customers will still, stand on your end and use your services. So for sure, this will be a challenge for all the companies who actually needed to step out of the Dutch market and looking forward to get the license again.
Yeah, absolutely. And just briefly as well on the other quarterly reports here too, is I think Evolution is also another interesting case. Like, what other organization can publish 100% EBITDA growth quarter on quarter and lose 10% of its share price on the day of the news? That is absolutely fascinating to me. And then you can ask yourself, why is this happening? I mean, I mentioned it to Robin yesterday that it's funny with Evolution, because in the quarterly reports they have stopped using the phrase all-time high, and they don't really mention that they have done an all-time high report, because it just happens every quarter. Every quarter is an all-time high, and that is expected. So it's just become normal to them, and so I think investors are now looking at, again, in the future, where is the growth going to come from in Evolution? The disappointment in the report is the fact that they still have not been able to grow the RNG revenue. And so there's been several of the major releases on the RNG side has been released in Q2. And we haven't seen the effect of any significant increase in revenue from this new product plan that is being rolled out, essentially. And so Evolution still they still haven't proved themselves on the RNG side of things. They are still showing growth on the live casino side of things, and that's obviously where they have proven themselves over the last 15 years in that segment. But the expectations from investors is that with these new verticals on RNG, that they will be able to show the same hyper growth, and they have not shown that yet. There's a 3% increase in revenue quarter on quarter from NetEnt and Red Tiger, and that is way below the competition, the likes of Pragmatic, No Limit City, and others who are growing exponentially. But NetEnt, Red Tiger have not been able to show that same growth. And so the question is, how is Evolution going to continue showing this growth that investors are expecting? And Q4 will be very interesting for that very reason. Is now they have to prove themselves in the next quarter. If they don't show growth in the RNG side, I think they will be punished by the investors. And also, again, looking at diversifying the revenue streams, the largest market, if you will, is called the rest of Europe, which kind of probably includes Germany and other markets. For the first time is stagnant. That's where we've seen hypergrowth previously, but that segment is now stagnant. We see good growth in the US market, but the US market is only 10% of total revenue. Now, if we want to believe Martin Collesund, the CEO of Evolution, the North American market could become up to 10 times bigger than the European market. Now, if that is in 15 or 20 years, that's not my question to answer. But they will need to show quicker growth, I think, in the North American market in order to justify the share price, because the North American revenue is regulated revenue. and investors put a higher multiple on regulated revenue versus unregulated revenue in Asia, for example. So even if they grow the revenues in Asia, the investors want to see growth on the regulated revenue because they value that revenue higher. It's safer revenue rather than Asian revenue, which can change from one day to the other if the market conditions changes in that industry. So Evolution has some questions to answer as well. Even though they are showing all-time high results, they are a machine. They are increasing the revenue from all over the place, and they are just seemingly unstoppable. They have monopoly in North America. I mean, what a company, what an organization. It's a money printing machine. 70% EBITDA margin, insane. I mean, but that also causes other issues. Like they have 70% EBITDA margin, and that they are celebrated for that. And so another thing investors are expecting is that Evolution will acquire other companies. But what other companies can they acquire while still maintaining that EBITDA margin? There isn't anyone else in the industry to acquire. BTG was a perfect fit, Big Time Gaming, which was acquired earlier in the year, because they had such high margins. And they had the intellectual property and low cost in the organization and so on. But what other organization have those margins? I mean, the speculation that Evolution would acquire a sportsbook, for example, like Kambi or another company like that, is just completely unrealistic in my eyes. For that very reason, the margins are very low, and yes, they can acquire another vertical. Yes, they can acquire some revenue, but they are still unproven on the RNG side of things to begin with. And I think they have the company has a lot to prove before they look to become some form of 365-degree solution for the industry and become the next Playtech, which comes with its own risk, of course.
And just to put your statement of investors value regulated revenue more than unregulated revenue, especially from Asia. We have a topic, the DraftKings acquisition of SBTech, when the Hindenburg report just pointed out that I wouldn't state it like shady deals or which SBTech actually did in the non-regulated Asian market, but there's something that not working in a proper way, just to state it like this, because otherwise a state authority from New York wouldn't kind of send an invitation to the C-levels of DraftKings and telling them, okay, at this and that date, you need to be here on court. So there are always strings attached and a high risk if you rely on revenues coming from an unregulated market, as we can see from the Hindenburg report, and DraftKings is pretty much an example how things could turn out. Touching down on DraftKings and heading over to another topic.
Yes.
DraftKings, they left the table for their acquisition bid of Entain. It's a 20 billion plus offer, which they actually handed over to Entain. And the overall merger of a, as soon as you just hit a certain amount of an acquisition, and for sure 20 billion plus isn't an acquisition which you literally just pay it out of your pockets and state like, yeah, how many money do we still got left in the bank? Yeah, it's 20 billion. Yeah, just head over to Europe, to the UK, and buy something like Entain. So there are always strings attached. And it seems like the overall acquisition of Entain seems to be so complex and there are so many strings attached that DraftKings actually left the overall conversation table and negotiation table. Is there anything you can add to this topic as well?
Yeah, it's really interesting dynamics in general here, because the offer that DraftKings laid out for Entain wasn't as straightforward as two companies negotiating yes or no, but there was a third party here, a third wheel, if you will, the little child here of the two that is named MGM, right? So MGM, they have a joint venture together with Entain for the US market, where basically Entain provides the technology, marketing know-how, industry knowledge, and so on for MGM to launch BetMGM. Right, so that's a joint venture between Entain and MGM. Now, in the contract between MGM and Entain, there's a very clear clause here that MGM has the rights to first refusal if there is any form of M&A activity here. So basically, all three parties would need to agree in order for DraftKings to acquire Entain. And then you would think that what would be in the interest of MGM to help a competitor? Well, there was actually quite clear interest from MGM to allow this deal to happen, and that's the fact that if MGM wants to become the market leader, going through a joint venture is probably not the way to do so. They probably want to have the freedom to control their destiny. And so there was an incentive for MGM to create a deal, basically, in order to continue driving the US online operations on their own, right? But it's very complex, this three-way deal, and eventually it did not happen. There isn't that many details around why this is the case or which party took the decision, let's say, but I would imagine that MGM put pretty strict requests in order for these discussions to continue, and they were probably not met by Entain particularly and DraftKings. That's my humble. My humble prediction, but I'm sure here in the coming weeks that there will be more details coming out from this, and I'm also sure that the book is not closed yet here. I think this opens up the door for perhaps MGM to counter with a new bid of Entain, right? So earlier in the year, MGM, they bid $11 billion to acquire Entain. Entain nicely said thank you, but no thank you. And a couple of months later, again, this bid from DraftKings of $22 billion, as in double the bid of MGM, came out here. So obviously, if MGM is going to acquire Entain, the price has obviously gone up significantly. And but the ball is now in their court, and who knows if there's going to come a new bid, or if DraftKings is going to continue the discussions perhaps with Entain and MGM, and there might be a new bid down the line. Maybe it's just that the time restrictions were where they were, and they just need more time in order to come up with an actual structure of this deal, because it's a lot of technology challenges here, where if BetMGM would continue to drive the US operation, how would they do so using Entain's technology, for example? And so these are questions that need to be ironed out, because it's not so easy to just migrate your technology stack to a completely different platform. And obviously, Entain is world class when with their tech stack in general. So yeah, I'm sure the last chapter is not written to this book yet, Nico, and I'm sure in a couple of weeks or month we'll be following up on this story.
For sure. And in the end, DraftKings, they didn't just leave the table, the negotiation table without any strings attached. They actually still have the right to continue the overall counter and offering process as soon as there will be another offer on the table. DraftKings still holds the right to actually step into the ring and to come up with a counter offer as well. So it's for sure it's something which we will just see, or which will keep on the news for quite a while. As you already pointed out, that MGM already made an offer in March or April, valued 11 billion. Now it's 22 billion on the table. Maybe the next offer will be 33 billion. So for sure, we will see something happening on the M&A side, which will be big. So It's not just a regular takeover. It's at least two giants, gaming giants, battling to overtake one of the companies.
Absolutely.
So for sure, something interesting. Another interesting thing we've seen on the US side have been the numbers from Connecticut. So Connecticut is a licensed state licensed entity, and they released numbers for the first week of operations. So besides 1.2 million bets being placed within this 1 week of operations, which is just great for a market which actually is licensed for the first time, we see one interesting fact. Out of these 1.2 million bets placed, 8%, or in other words, 100,000 bets have been placed by New Yorkers. So why is this so interesting? First of all, the one of the revenue strongest parts of the US is not Nevada. It's a small town or a small part of New Jersey called Fort Lee. So what is Fort Lee? It's a small part of New Jersey, which is the first part for Manhattans to as soon as they, crossed George Washington Bridge. So if you want to place a bet, either you could, use a VPN, which is quite difficult, or you just head over to George Washington Bridge, log into a Starbucks, log into the internet via a Starbucks, and then you can place a bet. So on a day-to-day basis, Fort Lee outperforms Nevada with revenues. And this is just insane. It's insane. So this just puts the overall Connecticut numbers into a little bit perspective. As of now, if you're living on the northern end of Manhattan, Connecticut is just around the corner. Having this in mind, revenues from Manhattans on New Jersey, Fort Lee, or Connecticut, this just puts the overall value of the licensing process of the state of New York a little bit into perspective. As of now, the New York State Gaming Commission, they have a quite interesting way of running their the overall application, because in the end they announce, okay, there will be just 2 licenses being given out. So in the end, it's like a Squid Game to, just 2 survivors. And in the end, they tend to release press releases of the latest status quo. Why do they actually do this? They want the operators to actually bid each other out. So in the end, they announced, okay, as of now, there's a tax rate of 64% on the table. So whoever's interested in becoming licensed in the state of New York has to match that offer. So if you just remember, in Germany, people and operators are going crazy and nuts with a tax rate of 5%. Just imagine what would happen if anyone except the state of New York would come up with a tax rate of 64%, and still operators are deeming and looking for to being licensed in that particular state. And these are just insane numbers. And this is how, if you just connect the bits and pieces of numbers from Connecticut, numbers from New Jersey, and now the overall regime, and why the New York State Gaming Commission is such a powerful entity, because in the end they can come up with whatever number they want to come up with, and operators would still be looking into the market and wanting to being licensed as well. So this just puts the numbers of Connecticut into perspective a little bit.
And it also puts into perspective that this assumption that the US market is just going to be a free-for-all, incredible opportunity for the entire iGaming industry is not necessarily the case. We'll see different states acting in different ways, and in this case, it's going to be difficult to reach profitability in the US, in New York under these circumstances. Also, I appreciate the geography lesson here. I actually did not know that Connecticut is connected to New York. So thank you very much for that, Nico. And it's really interesting to hear that that state is numbers are boosted by New York residents who are not able to place bets, on the other side of the river, let's say.
Yeah, it's just insane. Or as Katie, she's attending our Clubhouse session on a regular basis. When you ask her, okay, who will be the winners and losers in the gaming industry, and she was pretty strict, stating, okay, whoever gains the license in New York will be on the losing side. So she didn't even think about this for a second. She just shot this statement straight away. And I'm pretty sure that all the strings attached to being licensed in the state of New York and the tax regime, etc., will be quite difficult to overcome. But it's, as said, it's interesting to see which operators are actually going for the license in the state of New York.
Yeah.
One more thing.
Yes.
One more thing. Licenses and things we did not see coming. Just this morning or late yesterday, the Swedish regulator, they lifted a ban, or they announced they wanted to lift a ban on slots and casinos. Can you just walk us a little bit through that topic, Pierre?
Really surprising, actually, that the SGA, the Swedish regulator, lifted these temporary restrictions that were enacted during the beginning of the pandemic in 2020. And so the reason for that was that the regulator felt that during the pandemic we need to kind of protect the populace. The online gambling was increasing, and they enacted these temporary deposit limits and bonus limits that limited any player in Sweden to deposit more than about 500 euros a week. And essentially, these temporary restrictions were then prolonged and prolonged again. And the expectation from the industry was that these are now, this is just an excuse, and these are now permanent restrictions. And still, even still, the Swedish market looks healthy. The operators are turning a profit and doing well and so on. But out of the blue, the Swedish regulator announced now that these temporary restrictions will be lifted from mid-November, so in a couple of weeks. And however, there's an however here. The minister, Ardalan Shekarabi, who is responsible to oversee the gambling regulation, also pointed out very clearly here that we might have seen a long-term shift in behavior from the populace and the new behavioral patterns where online gambling and kind of the move into the industry for more players is a permanent change. And so that might mean that the landscape has changed and we might need different measures. So Ardalan tasks the SGA, the regulator, to basically propose to him a new set of measures towards industry, and also to review the temporary restrictions as well, how effective they were. And I think the bigger question here is, how did they affect the channelization rates, right? So this is the reason why the industry, you can't, as a politician, you can't just put these heavy restrictions on the industry, because the only effect it's going to have is that the players will move to unregulated operators that offers better bonuses, better margins, but also don't protect their players. And so it's in the interest of the politicians to work with the industry to have reasonable restrictions, so that yes, we do take care of our players, we do take care of the individuals who are at risk of falling into addictive behaviors, but also making sure that there is some form of freedom connected to the regulation, where the players are incentivized to basically play at the regulated offer, where there are taxes, where there is better protection to the players, and so on. So we will see here now. I think there was the deadline in 2023 to basically propose these new potential measures that might be introduced in Sweden. So in the short term, this is great news for the operators. In the long term, we don't know what it's going to mean yet. But I think that the regulator in Sweden have passed the stage where they are just trying to they are just enacting really strict measures for the sake of doing so, and they understand these questions of the channelization rate. They understand that if they enact too strict measures, the operator is just going to leave the regulated space and operate unregulated instead, because it's not illegal to operate unregulated. It's just that you can't target the players in the same way, or you can't offer a site in Swedish and so on. So it's very much remains to be seen what's happening in that market. But I think, a couple of years ago, Sweden was like the Nostradamus of the industry when the regulation came. Oh my God, the entire industry took a step back because of Sweden. But now it seems that Sweden is potentially a market that is going to look more positive again. We'll have to see, but it's quite interesting what's happening, and a good sign for the industry, I think, that the regulator is tasked of looking into these new measures while they are removing the temporary measures.
And maybe this might also be related to, especially the Nordics. And the Nordics company taking a huge hit with not being regulated in the Dutch market. Now the Swedish market opens up again, probably based on the big hit, especially the Nordic companies are taking from the Dutch market. So this might also be one of the reasons, probably not the main reason, but as you have stated, no one actually saw that one coming. Right, and especially with the Q3 numbers being reported, the Q4 warnings being given out, maybe that's also one of the reasons.
Yeah, exactly. And then interesting as well to keep an eye out for Norway, keep an eye out for Finland, still two unregulated markets here, and Norway has been working in the last couple of years to try to restrict players from being able to deposit into online casinos, but the online gambling industry have been very good at circumventing these payment restrictions. But Norway is getting better and better at restricting players to deposit. It's getting more and more difficult for Norwegian players to deposit money into online gambling. So that is detrimental to that market. Finland might regulate, who knows? And so we have to keep an eye out for these markets. Like the days are over where the industry, as you're seeing, unregulated massive growth from quarter to quarter. Now we are moving past that. We are moving into becoming a more mature industry, and this was going to happen sooner or later. And I think we are facing short-term challenges again. but the industry's outlook for the long term is very, very positive. I just want to point that out because we've been a little bit dark in our commentaries today, but we are operating in an industry of the future.
True, and we're pretty much operating in an industry who gets along with regulation and which actually comes up with further steps of regulating itself. Right, and this is a very positive thing about our industry as well.
Absolutely, Nico. I think that this has been a fantastic wrap up today. What do you think?
Indeed,
Nico?
Indeed, it is. So we touched on so many topics, but it was fun. It was fun once again, Pierre. Just walking through all these great topics.
Absolutely. And I'd like to thank you again, Nico, for always putting your own wrap-ups together here. You've done that like 40-something weeks in a row. Always, this is the best way to get the information of what's happening in the industry, bar none, I can tell you. And so does the people who listen to you as well, Nico. So thank you for always putting this together. And I hope to see you next week.
We will.
Yes,
for sure.
Absolutely. What do you think, Nico? Shall we take our sangria? We head down to the beach and we
for sure.
Cheers once again.
For sure. So I will just cross the Isar, the river of Isar, here in Munich. We have like 7 degrees, so maybe I'm just looking for a Glühwein, right? So not the sangria, but something we will just get along in Germany during these cold times.
Brilliant, Nico. I wish you a great weekend, and I'll see you next week.
Likewise.
All right, thank you, everybody. Take care. Ciao.